Welcome and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Zandra Hawkins and I'm the Director of GunSense New Hampshire, a project to grant state progress. Today's press conference is hosted by GunSense New Hampshire, along with the GunSense New Hampshire Youth Advisory Board, NEA, or the National Education Association of New Hampshire, the American Federation of Teachers New Hampshire, also known as AFT, Moms Demand Action, the Kent Street Coalition, the Campaign to Keep Guns Off Campus, and other members of the New Hampshire Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. We are here today because our state leaders need to take action to reduce gun violence and protect our schools and communities. Gun violence is the #1 leading cause of death for children and teens in our country, and it's a largely preventable one. As back to school season rolls around, so do fears over school shootings, especially in light of credible school shooting threats in New Hampshire over the past year. New Hampshire is not immune to the threat of gun violence, and no community ever expects to be the next one to make national headlines. But according to Education Week, there have been 25 school shootings this year that resulted in injuries or death. Across the country, there have been more than 420 mass shootings in 2023, according to the Gun Violence Archive. We can't turn on the news without fear of a school shooting or another act of gun violence, sending a message to our children that they are not safe. In New Hampshire, there's no state gun-free school law, and public safety laws around background checks, waiting periods, extreme risk protection orders, and safe storage fall far short of what we need. Earlier this year, the New Hampshire State Legislature rejected several bills that would have strengthened gun violence prevention. And Governor Chris Sununu and Education Commissioner Frank Edelblut are right there with them, blocking progress to protect our schools and communities. We demand more for our children and for our futures. We have several speakers here today who can speak about how the cloud of gun violence throws shadows on what should be an exciting and joyful time of the year. First up, I'd like to invite Megan Tuttle, President of NEA New Hampshire, to tell us what back to school season means for educators. Megan?
Thank you, Zandra. Good morning. It's wonderful to be here with all the other advocates today who care about the same thing each educator thinks about when they step into our schools every day, and that's our students and their ability to learn in strong, safe, and supportive environments. My name is Megan Tuttle, and I'm the president for NEA New Hampshire, where we represent 17,000 educators across the state. That includes teachers, paraprofessionals, counselors, custodians, school bus drivers, food service workers, aides, nurses, secretaries, and many more. First, I want to thank all the educators and school staff who are readying their classrooms, prepping their lessons, organizing the offices, practicing the bus routes. We know how much work it takes to go into getting the school year off to a good start, so thank you for all that you do. As a social studies teacher in 8th grade for 18 years, I know that back to school time is a special time for our educators and for our kids. It's fall, but for our educators, it's really their spring. We're full of hope, eager to spark that moment of understanding and learning in another student because we love what we do. That's also why we're hopeful that our elected officials won't let another school year go by without doing everything they can to address the threat of gun violence. Our teachers need to be able to teach in a safe environment, free from the threat of gun violence that rocks our nation. Our students need to be able to learn in safe environments without the distraction and the stress of active shooter drills, and without watching the count on the number of school or community shootings tick up. The Biden administration is making strides with the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, but we must do more, especially here in New Hampshire. We are one of only 3 states that do not have gun-free school laws on our books. We have the option for federal funding to pass and implement an extreme risk protection order, but our state legislature and Governor Sununu have yet to act. We know that no community expects to become the next Sandy Hook or Parkland, and we also know that no one policy is going to prevent gun violence, which is why it's important that we use all the tools and best practices we have available to stop gun violence before it starts, and to make sure that our students, our educators, and our communities can have safe schools and communities. We're calling on Governor Sununu, Commissioner Edelblut, and the members of the New Hampshire legislature to join us in taking urgent action to address gun violence.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you to all the educators and school support staff, administrators, and bus drivers out there who are working so hard to get the school year ready for our students. Next up, I'd like to invite Debrah, President of AFT New Hampshire, to speak with us about the concerns and hopes of that her members are bringing forward.
Yes, good morning. My name is Dan Pounds. I am President of AFT New Hampshire, and we represent 4,000 members across the state of New Hampshire, mostly in pre-K through 12 public elementary, but also university faculty and town public employees. This is, as President Tuttle was saying, a time of new beginnings for most of us. It is the start of a new school year, and we are full of energy, we are full of hope. What we want to be focusing on right now mostly is our students. We want to get to know our students. We want to know who they are as people. We want to know what they like and what they don't like. It's a time to learn about them, what they know about reading, math, science, and history, what they want to learn, what their goals are in life. We want to know where to start teaching with our content area. We want to know what's going to help them reach those goals that they've set for themselves. What's going to help them grow up to be good citizens of our communities and our country. We want to build good classroom communities where we can all learn together, where everyone feels they belong, where everyone feels safe. What we don't want to be doing is worrying about the next headline of a shooting on a campus or in a classroom somewhere in the country, and hopefully not here in New Hampshire, but really nowhere makes it feel safe for anyone. What we don't want to be doing is having active shooter drills, because even those make kids feel unsafe. We have research that shows that practicing an active shooter drill doesn't actually make students feel more in control. It traumatizes them. It also traumatizes some of our staff. It makes them feel more insecure. I have been in classrooms where we're practicing these drills and watched children crying, holding hands under the reading table because they were so concerned about the concept of a bad guy coming into their school shooting. Even though we're explaining it in the words we were told to use as part of the drill, it was scaring the children. We've seen through research that these drills makes kids more anxious and less likely to want to come back to school. It interferes with their ability to see school as a safe place and their ability to learn in school, long past the day of that drill, long past that drill that month. And if you figure you have to do it often enough so that kids know how to do it to get any use out of it, you're interfering with their learning. You're taking school away as a safe place where they can learn. So at that point, what are you getting out of it? Are you improving their safety at school, or are you taking away their ability to learn at school? So we don't want school to be an anxious place because of having to do these traumatizing drills. We also don't want string after string of hoaxes called in, leading to schools having to be locked down and evacuated. We saw that last year in New Hampshire. How many families were petrified when they heard that their kid's school was in a lockdown? It turned out, thank goodness, to be a hoax. But how many students, how many staff, how many families went through that fear in New Hampshire last year? So what we're calling on is for policymakers at every level, but particularly right here in this building across the way, to take action this year to better protect all of our students, all of our staff, so that the students can focus on learning like they need to, our staff can focus on teaching those students, and we can go back to what we're supposed to be doing, which is building a better future for all of those precious children. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you for bringing up that gun violence doesn't have to be our norm and doesn't have to be our future. We do have options and solutions that can prevent gun violence before it happens, and which can save lives. But the reality is that for too many children, lockdowns and high security barred schools are part of their everyday experience. Next up to speak with us about this is Dante, a senior at Nashua High School South and a member of the GunSense New Hampshire Youth Advisory Board. Dante?
Hello, my name is Dante Castellano, and I am a rising senior at Nashua High School South and a member of the GunSense New Hampshire Youth Advisory Board. I am also the student representative for my school to the Nashua Board of Education. Gun violence is a very complex and controversial issue in our country. While it is a constitutional right for people to own firearms, it does not mean that it should be easy to attain a gun and shoot up a school, church, grocery store, apartment building, or some other place where innocent people perform their typical day-to-day activities. The loss of innocent lives should not be a topic that is debated over. There is once a day when people can go to a sporting event, concert, school, or other large gathering without thinking at all about the possibility of some sort of attack. Nowadays, it's typical for one to second-guess attending one of these big events due to fears of gun violence. Many opponents say it's people that are the problem and not guns. And while it is true that there are lots of mental health problems and other similar issues in our country, guns are undoubtedly a huge component of gun violence issues. Without easy access to guns, gun violence would not be a prevailing issue. As a student at one of the largest schools in the state, largest public schools, there has been more than one time that I have thought about the not so low chance of some sort of school shooting happening at my school or any schools in the district, or state for that matter. Students should be able to go to school ready to learn and socialize. They shouldn't have to think and worry about where they should hide or escape in the chance that someone enters their building and starts shooting up their school, which I know is a pretty common thought nowadays. Lockdown drills are now common occurrences for students of all ages, and while it is good to be prepared for bad situations, it would certainly be better if we didn't have to worry about things like this and could just focus on core education and typical school activities. And I know it's not just schools that get shot up. Incidents of gun violence can happen literally anywhere where there are people. My generation and the ones after need to be the ones who need to fight to fix this issue before gun violence becomes the #1 cause of death across all ages in our country. There are so many ways that this problem could be fixed. A lot of these solutions can be implemented in major policy changes. For example, any ordinary person should not be able to just go to their local gun store and get a firearm that is used on battlefields, when we know that mass shooters choose military assault weapons because of the rapid and lethal harm they inflict on others. For that matter, someone shouldn't easily be able to get any firearm. Stronger background checks, waiting periods, and extreme risk protection orders are just a few things that could be implemented to reduce the amount of people being killed daily. And we do not need guns in our schools, which are places for us to learn and make friends and memories, not worry about whether someone is going to shoot us. Common sense gun laws are essential for helping solve this issue. Not only do we need massive policy changes, we also need people everywhere to buy into these changes and promote them. Our country is supposed to be one of the best in the world, but we are not living up to it when we let gun violence harm our communities and our people. While I was traveling in Europe over the summer for over 2 weeks, I do not recall hearing about a single issue of gun violence in the area where I was staying, and those were some of the largest cities in the world. Whereas here in the United States, it can feel like it is a daily occurrence at times. So clearly, we have a really big gun violence issue in our country, and it's going to take a lot of work to fix it, but it can and must be done.
Thank you, Dante. And I think back to students who've told us that they've been through too many lockdown drills to count, that they've been in situations where students weren't told that it was a drill, and that they've seen the fear that their classmates experienced when they thought there was a shooter in the school. We had George Vasco, a senior from Milford High School, tell us that lockdowns have become so normalized within our schools that some students have stopped taking them seriously. It's hard for students to go through those drills and have the hope that they will help when they see on the news what happens. Some children are so traumatized by the threat of gun violence in the classroom that they play sick on days when active shooter drills take place. As Dante said, students go to school to learn, not to fear for their lives. And it's not just our schools that we're worried about. It's It's our movie theaters, our grocery stores, and our community centers. I invite Marcella Doobie of Moms Demand Action, a powerful organization working to reduce gun violence, to join us for remarks.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you guys for supporting such an important cause. My name is Marcella Doobie. I have been an active member of Moms Demand Action since 2018. I am a mother of 4, all who have experienced lockdowns, fear of going in public places. So I've got a range of kids in age up to 23. Last session, our lawmakers failed to pass a single gun safety measure as we continue to fall behind our New England counterparts and neglect to address this crisis. The uniquely American epidemic of gun violence in schools is a preventable tragedy, but for far too long, many of our so-called leaders have only offered their thoughts and their prayers. We're here to say that that's not enough and we need action now. Our kids should be looking forward to class, not looking for the nearest exit. We must do more to keep our kids, teachers, and other school staff safe from gun violence. Common sense gun safety policies like secure storage and extreme risk laws are proven solutions to keeping guns away from kids and preventing those who are at risk, causing harm to themselves or others from accessing guns. Every single instance of gunfire that our children are exposed to impacts their ability to learn, grow, and develop. We must address the epidemic of daily gun violence that plagues far too many communities across the Granite State, and that casts a shadow over our children in a crucial time of their growth and development. Guns are the #1 killer of children, teens, and college-age people in America. Outside of school halls, the presence of gun violence continues to be prevalent for young people, whether that's at a shopping mall, a music festival, neighborhood playgrounds, sporting events, or places of worship. So many other places across our communities that should be safe. In a new report released by Everytown, the average young person in the United States reported knowing at least one person who has been injured or killed by a gun. On August 13th, 2013, Joshua Savion, a classmate of my daughter, was shot and killed by his father during a supervised custody visit at the Manchester Y, weeks before starting 4th grade. While parents are worried about the safety of our kids, from the school drop-off until pickup, our governor has been more focused elsewhere. While neglecting the safety of New Hampshire families, we can't afford another school year of negligence. Currently, New Hampshire has no law that requires unattended firearms to be securely stored, meaning our state currently fails to require firearm owners to store their weapons in a way that prevents children and other unauthorized users from accessing them. Last session, lawmakers failed to strengthen New Hampshire's child access prevention law and require that all gun sales be accompanied with a locking device. Requiring guns to be securely stored prevents children from getting their hands on a gun and unintentionally shooting themselves or others, or bringing it into the playground or school. Secure storage also helps keep guns out of the hands of those who pose a risk for harming themselves or others. Measures like these are vital to the efforts to promote responsible firearm ownership. Sadly, the majority of gun deaths in New Hampshire are from firearm suicide. Lawmakers in New Hampshire had an opportunity last session to adopt preventable public safety measures that could support people in crisis and prevent senseless acts of gun violence in our communities by passing the extreme risk laws, often known as red flag laws, and requiring background checks. Extreme risk laws can protect public safety by helping to prevent mass shootings, but they can also protect New Hampshire residents in crisis when they're at a high risk of suicide. In Connecticut, the red flag law was associated with a 14% reduction in firearm suicide. In the 10 years since Indiana passed its extreme risk law in 2005, the state's firearm suicide rate decreased by 7.5%. Loopholes in our state's background check system weaken gun possession laws, enabling criminals and other people with dangerous histories to get armed with no questions asked. Currently, New Hampshire has no state law requiring background checks on gun sales because the only requirement is the one created by the federal law. Prohibited people can avoid a background check by buying guns from unlicensed sellers, including those they find online or at gun shows. That could include people who are subject to extreme risk protective orders issued in neighboring states like Massachusetts and Vermont. By requiring a thorough background check on gun sales by unlicensed sellers, lawmakers could greatly reduce the risk that a prohibited person could access firearms, making our communities safer. In average, 141 people die by guns. With a rate of 9.7 deaths per 100,000 people, New Hampshire has the 43rd highest rate of gun deaths in the U.S. 88% of gun deaths in New Hampshire by firearm suicide. Gun violence costs New Hampshire $2.2 billion each year, which is $22.4 million paid by our taxpayers. So we are asking, as we return back to school, that we focus on keeping our children and our communities safer by enforcing and enhancing and supporting common sense gun legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella, and thanks to all the Moms Demand Action volunteers who are with us today. Moms Demand Action New Hampshire does such a great job educating and organizing around gun violence prevention in our state. In closing, let's make this the school year where we act to reduce gun violence. We know the steps. We know we don't have to live and die this way in America. And if our leaders act with urgency, we can keep our schools and our communities safe. And with that, we'll take any questions from the media. Seeing none, we will close the press conference. Thank you all so much for being here.